What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering, and it would appear that Joe Rogan is in hot water again from the same people that you would expect over on Twitter, the crazy cancel culture mob that is constantly roaming. Look, there are certain topics that you're just not allowed to talk about. In particular, I shouldn't say not allowed to talk about, but not allowed to not parrot the mainstream narrative. There are certain topics that are just too hot, that are too risky to cover, and Joe Rogan doesn't appear to be afraid to cover it. Now, I've been critical of Joe in the past for seemingly accepting the self-censorship from Spotify in exchange for $100 million reduce, but I've also said that I don't think any human would fault him for that. It's $100 million. But Silicon Valley and big tech are constantly looking to stick their grimy little fingers into everything you do, including your data, which is, before I get into the story, why I use a VPN and why I have an awesome offer for all of my viewers from Private Internet Access. Check this out. Huge shout out to this video's sponsor, Private Internet Access. Look, it's 2021 and everybody should have a VPN. The one I use is Private Internet Access. Why do I use Private Internet Access? Well, there's a bunch of reasons. First of all, they have a no-log policy. Second of all, my one subscription is good for up to 10 devices, so I can protect my PC, my laptop, my cell phones, my tablets, and all sorts of other things. I use Private Internet Access. I recommend it to my friends and family when they ask. Look, it's also great to unblock geo-restricted content, websites, YouTube included, social media networks, find better deals online, play games blocked in your region, and protect your identity while keeping your data encrypted. They also have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out risk-free, and CNET rated it as, quote, spectacular, and it's got PC Mag's Editor Choice Award for the past 5 years. And Private Internet Access has an amazing offer for you, subscribers of The Quartering. If you use my link in the pinned comment down below, you can save 77%. You can get total protection for $2.59 a month, get your online browsing protected, and help support the channel by signing up with Private Internet Access today. Keep control of your data and a lot of other benefits. Really, everyone should be using a VPN these days, and Private Internet Access is the one I use, and they've got a special offer for you. Now, if we go back to earlier in the month, Joe Rogan had confirmed that Spotify censored his earlier shows. There were a few episodes, quote, they didn't want on their platform. Now, this is something that Joe never really made any kind of formal announcement about, but we as viewers noticed, when the big transition from YouTube to Spotify exclusive happened, people noticed that there were certain episodes that didn't get transferred. Alex Jones, Sargon of Akkad, Jordan Peterson's daughter, and a wide variety of others. I think it was more than a dozen in total. Gavin McInnes, I think, was one. More than a dozen or so that just didn't get transferred over. And it wasn't really ever about the content of the particular episode. It was about the person. This is not something I support. Again, $100 million is a lot of money, and we pick our battles. And, I don't necessarily call Joe a bad man for this, but it was something he never really addressed in any meaningful way, which I thought was pretty cowardly. And he finally did. Again, to answer the riddle, came from Joe, or the answer to the riddle from Joe Rogan came from Joe Rogan himself, who has now confirmed that Spotify simply refused to transfer a number of his earlier shows on the condition of the $100 million exclusive partnership, and Joe happily agreed to it. During the transition of Joe Rogan's podcast episodes onto the Spotify platform in 2020, fans quickly noticed that multiple past episodes were glaringly omitted. Those included interviews with figures like Milo Yiannopoulos, Gavin McInnes, and Alex Jones. Additionally, Rogan issued a rare public apology and correction over a claim he made about some of the issues going on in Oregon. In a recent podcast discussion with comedian Fahim Anwar, Joe Rogan stated that Spotify is now completely hands-off when it comes to his podcast, though that wasn't the case in the early days of the deal. But despite its frequent declarations regarding free speech, Rogan seemed more than happy to delete his earlier shows to seal the deal. Well, I mean, I think that, that we're all a little bit of a hypocrite here and there. my question is, would he have these people back on, and what would Spotify say? Well, we know he had Alex back on, and that carried on. So I wonder why it's okay now, but those other ones weren't okay. Then it was kind of just a really bizarre thing. Ironically, the topic of Spotify came up in the context of corporate censorship, specifically Netflix censorship of an episode of Hassan Minaj's Patriot Act following pressure from Saudi Arabian government. When I saw that Hassan show was pulled because of criticism of Saudi Arabia, I was like, what? Netflix? It made me think like, man, I don't know if that's the place. I don't know if that's the place anymore because I feel like there's too much corporate involvement. Well, that's basically everywhere. And, ultimately Spotify, I don't know if, you tell me, by the way, if you haven't yet and you're just coming across this video somehow in YouTube search, I hope that today will be the day I earn your subscription. There's a red subscribe button down below. It's the only way you'll find my videos, so please consider clicking that today. I don't find myself following Joe Rogan like at all anymore. I'm obviously he still has a gigantic following, but I just wasn't willing to install Spotify to follow him. And really, it seems like YouTube has kind of stopped suggesting his clips to me, probably because I don't watch the full show anymore, so the clips aren't relevant to suggest. I wonder how many people are out there like that now. Which raised a question, by the way, in this interview of Spotify actively censoring or controlling Rogan's editorial freedom. They don't give an F, man. They haven't given me a hard time at all, Rogan stated, before spilling the beans about the censorship bit. There are a few episodes that they didn't want on their platform, and I was like, okay, I don't care. But other than that, in terms of what I do in the future, big test was having Alex on. So that answers the question. Though Rogan insisted there won't be any further corporate oversight moving forward, a lot of people are like, they're telling Joe what he can and can't do. They're not. They're not. Well, fair enough. Let's see if he brings any of these people back on. But now, Joe Rogan under fire over allegedly phobic comments on his podcast. So among a ton of other ventures, Rogan is mostly known these days for his viral podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, which regularly draws millions of listeners. Considering how big the show has become, though, it's no surprise that everything the host says gets put under a microscope, which is exactly what happened shortly after the March 19th episode with fellow comedian Jim Breuer. By the way, Jim Breuer is the best. While discussing the trans community, by the way, again, it shouldn't be this way, but it's just bad for business. Like, it is such a minefield that you can't have any meaningful discussions about it, at least not right now. And that's not good. While discussing the trans community with Breuer, Rogan questioned what he considers to be the current mainstream attitude towards the topic of transitioning. Quote, "It's not fake," Rogan said. "There are people who really have these thoughts. The problem is it becomes a protected subject," thus proving his point, by the way. "And then you get praised for transferring your gender, for changing your gender. And then it gets exciting for people to talk about. And then you get chastised for even discussing it in any weird way." Rogan also complained about how he feels that the trans identity is being used for unconditional praise from their peers. Then people who were marginalized for being like generally dumb people, if they transfer over and they become another gender, then they get praised. The host continues, "There's a lot of people who are idiots. Some of them become trans. And now all of a sudden we think they're amazing." Rogan and Breuer only continued on the topic briefly, but their pit stop resulted in another round of accusations of phobia for the former Fear Factory host. According to Digital Music News, the site received multiple emails from people upset about the discussion. The criticism of the host soon started popping up on social media. Rogan is a bigot, actively spreads harmful misinformation about the trans community and issues. He's not open-minded, reasonable guy. He's just an a-hole and he's been an a-hole for a long time. But as I pointed out earlier, these people are literally proving his point. Rather than, by the way, his point is not even negotiable. It's an obvious fact. I'm not sure exactly what about his statement you could refute. The second half about the minefield that it is, you proved him right. The first half about blind praise, that's also right. What did Caitlyn Jenner ever do? But she's supposedly this, Bruce Jenner did a lot of things. What did Caitlyn ever do? But, this person is blindly praised. This is something that, is real. Maybe she's not the best example, but you get what I'm saying. Rogan has dealt with these claims back in 2020, where he responded at length to them in the media for calling him phobic. Despite the latest incident, the popular podcast host doesn't seem like he'll stop voicing his own opinions anytime soon, even if what he does say causes controversy once it comes out. It's not controversy, it's a non-troversy. And I've got to admit, this may... Look, I know I have trans viewers, and they know where I stand on it. I support you 100% in living your best life. But this is actively harmful when you just absolutely lose your mind, when you treat this community like a protected class where they're immune from any criticism, because what that does is it breeds hate, right? It paints the whole community as completely irrational and vindictive when they're not. But when they allow their identities to be weaponized against people, it creates far more hate than it would education. And it's far less productive to do that than to educate or to simply disagree. If you're going to cancel somebody every time they speak about trans issues, you're not going to make any progress in the public eye. That's just the facts of it. Like it or lump it, as they would say 100 years ago. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope Joe continues to stand up and keep speaking his mind. And if you haven't yet, make sure you check out the link in the description or in the pinned comment for an amazing deal on private internet access. Protect yourself today and help support the channel. Private internet access is the VPN I use, and I hope you'll sign up with them. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.